experiments, as are many of the other payloads. And so this gives an opportunity for the students to get their work out into space. And so that's what really excites us, this chance that, this opportunity that it gives for especially the younger members of our team and of the other teams.
All right, thank you so much for these insights, Professor J.N. Murthy of the Indian Institute of Astrophysics. And if you're just joining us, you're watching our special coverage of the Shenzhou-13 mission. The rocket is expected to launch at 23 minutes past midnight. We are a little less than 2 hours till takeoff. And let's talk about the long-term stay this time for this mission, right? The astronauts will be spending their New Year, their Spring Festival up there on the space station. And it's said that ground staff had prepared some gift package for them. So it'll be a surprise for all the astronauts. Professor Yang, do we know what might be in that surprise package?
Well, you know that Yaping is a girl. She likes sweet food. So I believe that during the Tiangong-3 mission, they must have some food, especially for her. And also, Yaping also confirmed that there will be dumpling during the New Year. So I believe that they will have the very delicious food. And also, Ms. Huang Weifen, also the chief designer of the astronaut system, has also mentioned that there are so many food that there will be different for every meal for even 1 week. So each meal is different. You know that the Chinese food is the best one in the world. So I believe what she mentioned is true. And also, you know that the 3 astronauts come from different places. Mr. Ye Guangfu comes from Sichuan province. I believe that he prefer the spicy food. So I think there are also some food for him.
Yeah, with the last mission, we already had a variety of foods for the Taiwanese. Kung Pao chicken, they have apples, a lot of fruits.
Yu Xiang fish flavored pork slices. I love it.
So the work might be hard, but they don't have to do it with all tasty food.
You know that these food are specially designed. The reason is that, you know, because of the difference between the gravity environment and the microgravity, the blood will be redistributed. So there will be more blood comparing with the ground on your tongues. So the tasting will be quite different in space and comparing with that on the ground. So although maybe the components are the same, but the proportion may be different for each kind of food to adapt this kind of special environment.
Professor Yang, thank you. We'll get back to you in just a few moments. You're now watching this special coverage of Shenzhou-13 spacecraft launch. It's part of China's efforts to build its own space station by the end of next year.
That's right. The 3 taikonauts will head to the core module of China's space station known as Tianhe, which was launched back in April. They will spend 6 months there building the space station. And Shenzhou-13 is part of China's efforts to complete the building of a space station set to be completed by the end of next year. Our Gao Yiming looks at what to expect.
The building of the Tiangong space station is a lengthy and difficult process. Altogether, it involves 11 different journeys into space, 4 crewed flights, 4 cargo flights, and 3 to set up the actual parts of the space station. A logistical monster, but a good start is half the battle, they say, and China has certainly managed that. It all began in late April when the most important section of the space station, the core module known as Tianhe, was launched from Wenchang Space Launch Site. Tianhe will serve as the living quarters for crew members and will provide the space station's power and propulsion. It'll be joined later by 2 further capsules where the astronauts will carry out their experiments. The capsules named Wentian and Mengtian will attach themselves to either side of the core module, making a T shape. Exactly 1 month after Tianhe's launch, Wenchang was a hive of activity once again. It was time for the first shipment of cargo on board the Tianzhou-2 spacecraft to be launched. With nearly 7 tons of cargo, it marked the debut for China's space station cargo transportation system. It included propellant and supplies to support human life in the space station.
3、2、1，起飞！
The third journey was a real landmark occasion, which saw the arrival of the first people on Tiangong. Shenzhou-12 mission involved 3 Chinese astronauts who stayed there for 3 months. Commander Nie Haisheng is one of China's most experienced taikonauts. He was selected for the country's first cohort of taikonauts back in 1998 and was a flight engineer on Shenzhou-6, China's second manned spacecraft. Liu Boming was part of the 2008 Shenzhou-7 mission, China's third manned spaceflight. And Tang Hongbo made his space debut in this mission. The trio conducted a series of technical tasks, such as repairs and maintenance and adjustments to equipment and payloads. They returned to Earth on September the 17th. Their 3-month journey set a new national record for the longest stay in space. 3 days after their return, China sent the second cargo spaceship Tianzhou-13 to Tiangong. The next chapter of this remarkable story will be written in mid-October, when a second crew will arrive at the space station. 2022 promises to bring even more excitement and construction as Tiangong gradually takes its distinctive T shape. Gao Yiming, CGTN.
I want to get back our reporter, Liu Jiaxing, now. She is joining us from the launch site in Jiuquan. Good to see you again, Jiaxing. Earlier, you were at the Wentian Hall, where the astronauts were given a warm send-off ceremony. Where are you now, and what do you have for us? Jiaxing, can you hear me? You got me?
Okay. Oh, yes.
Talk to
Yeah,
us. What
of
are you
course.
seeing? What do you have for us now?
Okay, yeah. So it'll be the second space mission with the taikonauts on board this year, and it's also the last mission of China's space mission to verify the key technologies of the space station. Right now, we are at the launch site of Jiuquan Satellite Launch Center. The temperature here is 8 degrees Celsius. Feels much colder. And right behind me is the launch pad. Right now, the rocket has been covered by the launch pad, and later at about 2 hours countdown, the pad will open layer by layer from the top to the bottom to reveal the whole image of the Long March 2F rocket. Well, for more on the Shenzhou-13 mission, this time they will send 3 taikonauts with 1 female taikonaut, Wang Yaping, into the space station for a 6-month stay. And for more on the highlights of the Shenzhou-13 mission, we are honored to be joined by the head of the launch system, He Pengju. 贺老师您好。
您好。
Okay. 关于我们这回这次的任务，神舟13号
Regarding
相比
the
于神舟12号
Shenzhou-13 launch mission compared to the previous Shenzhou-12 mission,
给我们讲讲它有什么样的亮点？
do please talk more about the highlights for this time?
我们神舟13号任务相
For
对于神舟
Shenzhou-13
12号的话
launch compared to the Shenzhou-12 mission, the A carrier rockets and also the A spacecraft, actually they waited in this position for 6 months. Before for standby for the mission, and then later on for prepare for the normal process, and also for the upcoming mission for the aircraft and also backup rockets. Actually, this is all in this new system and process, and this is also our new way of working. So we'll continue this process. So we consider like Shenzhou-14 right now is also ready. Yes, Shenzhou-14 right now is in the standby mode, and also for the other missions. And for the Shenzhou-13 launch, anything else this time? So from the look, from the appearance of Shenzhou-13 spacecraft, actually quite identical to Shenzhou-12. Right now, looking at the performance and the function, quite the same. And this time for Shenzhou-13, we look at this model, and this actually we are doing the radial rendezvous and docking. Talking about the difficulty this time, actually compared to the previous one, because Shenzhou-12 actually stocked with the combined from the front port. So this is the most difficult part this time. And we will finish the construction of China's space station next year, 2022. And we will perform 11 missions. So this is basically one after another in a very tight schedule. So talking about the launch side, what kind of preparation we have done? Before Shenzhou 12, the launch site actually gone through the multiple updates and improvements in order to lay a solid foundation for the following up launch missions. And for the tight launch mission, we had a quite firm team to make sure that we have the same team to carry out the whole mission. Right now we're looking at this is the rockets for Shenzhou-13 launch. And talking about the whole framework construction and why that we need to actually cover the rockets before the actual launch time. So this launch pad actually provides a closed environment, so you can change the temperature before the mission, and also right now our tachonauts already on board inside the capsule. So first we provide a quite enabling environment for the tachonaut before launch. Talk about today, it's really cold. It's reported 8 degrees Celsius. So talk about today's weather condition. Is that helping for today's mission? So talk about the location of our launch site, actually the wind from north, and today is the wind more to the east, so the humidity is a little bit high, and we talk about the temperature is not the main factor. We look at the wind direction, that's the main driver, the impact, the launch.
So because we're in a place with a lot of wind, sometimes sandstorms, so we have to pin down the right time, and we have to point towards the right trajectory, and also we have to look closely to the climate information. And this includes weather forecast, and this is also a great challenge actually. So we are going to lift off this rocket. What are the key milestones that we have to look at? Well, there are a couple of key milestones. Number one, the functional test. We need to conduct a thorough test and a walk around of the functions of the rocket, and also the outer surface of the rocket, and that is very important, and also the entry into the capsule, and also the entering or the initiation of the liftoff procedures, and then we're gonna power all the systems and subsystems, and this is also a key milestone. I have another question. So this is the layout of the space station. Tell me more about the layout of the space station. Well, the configuration of the layout is different, and we're going to launch another mission next year. At the very center, we have the core module, we have Tiangong-2 and Tiangong-3. So this is this T-shape configuration of our space station. Question, so will this affect the time of the rendezvous? For the time of the rendezvous, there won't be too much impact because we are adopting this automatic docking. So if we are docking from the front side, these two objects, they are in a linear relationship. And right now we are docking like this, and it's quite different. So you have to perfectly manage the relative speed of these two objects. So tell me about this power system. Is the power system sufficient to guarantee power supply and the normal operation of the 3 modules in outer space? There's no problem to that, I can tell you. One more question about the timing of the liftoff. And last time, the Shenzhou-13 mission was launched in the daytime. But why we choose night for this mission? Well, this is because the calculation of the orbit, and we have to calculate where our capsule is in orbit, and also you need to take into consideration the climate information, and this includes the weather conditions at the launching site, and also the maritime weather above the ocean. So based on all those conditions, we have made such decision on timing. Is there any new challenge for the launch system? What preparations have we made since the last mission? To ensure the successful operation of this mission, we have made a lot of preparations. During technical preparation, we started to take into account different phases of projects of the liftoff. So the crew is going to stay in orbit for 6 months, and they will conduct 2 to 3 extravehicular activities. So what are the possible challenges for EVA? Because I'm not on top of this, I don't have much information to share. I can maybe later direct this question to my colleagues.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, thank you very much for Mr. He to join us for this this live show. And we are now at Jiuquan Satellite Launch Center. This is the second space mission with astronauts on. So yeah, for more, we will keep you posted with the other experts on the rocket system later. So join us later. Back to you, back to the studio now.
Thanks so much, Jiaxing, and many thanks to your guests as well. That's Liu Jiaxing joining us live at the Jiuquan launch site. Now, earlier, as Jiaxing and her guests were speaking, we witnessed a key step at the launch tower. The top level of that launch tower has opened, revealing the escape tower. So that's a critical moment that happened at around 1.5 hours ahead of takeoff, so T-minus 1.5 hours. Now, space travel enthusiasts across the world are looking at today's proceedings with keen eyes, and one organization in particular, the Moon Village Association, hopes it can facilitate future moon exploration and utilization. And joining us now is the president, Dr. Giuseppe Raiboldi. Doctor, glad to have you with us. Talk to us about your organization and how the Tiangong space station could fit into its goals.
So, yeah. So I would say that the Moon Village Association goal is basically to create a forum to bring together stakeholders like space agency, industry, as well as international organization, as well as university, aiming to explore the moon in a peaceful and cooperative way. So the organization is aiming to pull together all these different stakeholders in order to have a fair, equitable exploration of the moon. As far as basically the mission that we are going to witness today, it is remarkable because we have it really live, and I think this is a very important milestone in terms of, let's say, giving this message across the world. The Chinese space station and the launch that we are witnessing is a major milestone in the direction of global international cooperation, because this is opening up the Chinese space station in a similar way like International Space Station did more than 20 years ago to international collaboration. So we are really looking with a lot of interest and with a lot of expectation that the second crew will join basically the Chinese International Space Station and the international participation that this will bring with a number of experiments from all over the world.
Dr. Raiboldi, for ordinary people watching a manned space flight, they think about how far they are away from possibly embarking on a trip like that. And we know state and privately sponsored space travel is frequently making headlines these days. how long do you think it will be before a trip to space becomes commonplace, becomes a choice of the common people?
Well, as we all have been witnessing, space tourism it's opening up. I would say this year with the first launches of Virgin Galactica as well as Jeff Bezos' New Glenn. So let's say the kind of space tourism is coming up. Of course, the cost is still extremely high, but as it was for the, let's say, airplane travel quite a number of years ago, this has been only for few people. In the case of space, there are at least two, if not three, critical issues. One is the cost, but the cost, we are extremely, let's say, hopeful that with the increasing number of, let's say, potential customer as well as technology of full reusable system, the cost will come down. So the one of the critical issues is that going to space and going to orbit, those 200 kilometers, is subjecting the body to strong, let's say, environment. So this, I'm afraid, is not going to be like for an airplane, let's say, trip. Is still going to be, at least for a while, something that is going to be for people which are fit. But I think is a very first important to bring people close to space.
And now it's almost T-minus 90 minutes for Shenzhou-13 mission as we speak. All the astronauts are strapped in the returning capsule of the spacecraft. Now, Dr. Ribaldi, your organization emphasizes the collaboration between the public and private sectors, right, as well as different countries. Is this feasible?
I think not only is feasible, it is actually necessity because the government have a limited amount of funds that they can dedicate to space and space exploration. So we do need to increase the amount of funds which are going in the space exploration. And the only way to do that is by having private company involved. In the same way as when the space, let's say, operation started many years ago, nobody would believe that by sending a satellite in orbit, it would have made a lot of money. There is a huge market, as you know, in the telecommunication, as well in the Earth observation, navigation. So now, as far as concerned space exploration, this is what is going to happen. Industry are seeking to open new market like space resources, space tourism, and many others, and this will increase the amount of money which will then be able to increase the exploration. So it is not only desirable, but it is a necessity.
Dr. Ribaldi, you talked about bringing this space closer to people. How do we do that? As media professionals, we are hoping that our broadcast cultivates an interest and a passion in people, because this is truly a fascinating, this is a great cause on so many different levels. But what is the responsibility for scientists? How do scientists foster further interest in space and space exploration?
Well, I think space exploration and space, let's say in general, it's a very fascinating. One of the key elements is to bring this fascination to everybody. So to everybody, including and in particular starting with the children. So one of the key for a sustainable exploration is to have a sustainable stream of enthusiastic people and high qualified people to work in it. How we do that, of course, it is not only one simple action, but there are many actions. But we all know that the image of Earth seen from the moon has basically given, let's say, reason a number of people, including myself, to really get deeply involved in space. So we need to let the people know what's happening, like the moon exploration is happening and is happening now. Not many people are knowing that. So I think the public and the media company like yours have an important responsibility to bring this kind of message to the public.
Thank you so much for your analysis and your insight, Dr. Giuseppe Reboldi. Appreciate your time. And let's get back to our studio conversation with our guests here. I mean, you two are obviously enthusiastic about space and space programs. Now that we see China's manned space program is picking up pace, do you think there has been enough interest on the part of the Chinese people towards our own space program? Professor, let me start with you.
Oh, yes, I think space has been separated, in my mind, 3 or 4 segments. The first segment, of course, is satellite technologies, launch vehicles. You know, we launch satellites, what we call navigation, communication, and remote sensings and scientific missions. And all of these are one scenario. So you have a near-Earth orbit scientific scenario for communications, weather forecasts, meteorologies, and many others. And this is for support of the day-to-day life in our people. And you don't feel it, and you take it for granted. So once you switch it off for one day, you feel it. You know, you don't have navigation, you don't have weather forecasts, you don't have telephone services and all that. So that is very important backbone for space programs. And second segment is the exploration program projects. We call lunar missions and Mars missions, Chang'e mission, and Zhurong, and many other missions that we have put into Moon and Mars. And that is more what we call robotic missions to outer space explorations. A third is our manned missions that we're seeing today, Shenzhou-13, ready to be launched, and came all the way from Shenzhou-5. Now we have manned onboard the missions, and also we have this manned missions are more inspiring to the populations. You know, we have manned in outer space. That is very inspiring and very, you know, make Chinese very proud and make the public very aware that we have a space program. You know, that is the key element of the manned mission. And also, I think in the future, we don't want to exclude the possibility of merging robotic missions with the manned mission. For example, we set a step on the moon in 10 or 15 years. That is not a impossibility, because we have matured our technology so much in the Chinese space station and in the Shenzhou missions, and also in our robotic exploration of the moon. So there's possibility in the future.
Professor Yang, I know you are always on the lookout to make your passion known to people about how much you're interested in the space program, because this is your line of work, but you're also welcoming more people to get to know our space programs better, to take an interest in what so many people have dedicated their lives for.
Well, you know, I always think it is my duty. It is the duty of all the space sector to let the public know the importance of the space activities. You know that, as Yan Song has mentioned, our navigation satellites, our communication satellites, our Earth observation satellites, all these satellites can serve the national economy directly, and we can get direct returns from these kind of space activities. But for the exploration, either the manned space programs or the deep space explorations, all these are usually the returns are indirect. So we must let the public know that although there are also some direct examples, for instance, the diapers for the babysitters and also the non-stick frying pan, these are direct transformation, and also the dried vegetables. These are some direct transplanting of the technologies, but most are indirect ones. It needs a lot of time, and also we cannot see that directly.
All right, there's some major movement there. I think they're preparing to close the hatch of the reentry module. Is that happening right now? They were taking some pictures, documenting everything, of course, but they will have to first close the hatch of the reentry module, then the door on the spacecraft, on the fairing.
Yes, the sequence what you mentioned is correct. So the first one is to close the hatch between the orbital module and the reentry capsule, and then close the and seal the side hatch of the orbital module, and the last one to close the panel on the payload fairing. And also, you know that during this procedure, there are also many other steps. For instance, to control the atmosphere inside the cabin. You know that's the ventilation, and also the provide the oxygen to the astronauts, and also the thermal control is very important. Usually, in a certain step of the counting down sequence, we designed a time point. At this moment, we switch the status of the ventilation system, the thermal control system, and so on.
So air tightness is crucial there.
Yes, it's the most crucial one. You know that the disasters do happen before. During the Soyuz 11 mission, because it is the first mission to a space station in human history. They say they are very successfully for 23 days. But during the re-entry, because of malfunction of a valve, so there is a leakage of the air of the cabin. So because you know that at that moment, the Soviet Union cosmonauts did not wear IVA spacesuit to save the mass, and they lost their lives, and very, very painfully.
Yeah, that's disastrous. You could never get things back from there. And earlier we were talking about commercial space travel, right, with Dr. Ribaldi. This year we've seen some great breakthroughs in commercial space travels with SpaceX, Virgin Galactic, Blue Origin. Does China have similar plans, Mr. Xu?
Well, we do have space sectors, and we, I've been using TikTok many times, and we saw many good news. Even the good news that one of the private sector's reusable rocket has been successfully airlifted into 100 meters and then safely landed back. So it's similar to SpaceX, Elon Musk, Falcon spacecraft, rocket system. So they are able to land safely back to the ground. So the private sectors are doing a lot of experiments. We do have rocket private sectors. About 6 or 7 companies are competing and making rocket and rocket testings and rocket launches in private sectors, but those are not human rated. What we're talking about, Virgin Galactic, you're talking about Blue Origin, those are passenger, like space tourism, including SpaceX. They send 3 astronauts for space tourism purpose. Right in China at this moment, we're still focusing on satellite launching capabilities.
So those rockets developed by these private companies here in China, what will they be used for satellite? But will they be included in government-led campaigns, space programs, or they will be fully funded by private company missions?
At this moment, the private sectors are fully funded by private sectors, and they have money raising mechanisms, and they develop their own rocket technologies. In fact, they're competing with the state-owned enterprises like Chinese Academy of Space Technology, CASC and CASIC. They have their own rocket technologies, but those private sectors are focusing on smaller launch vehicles. As you said, they're focusing on satellite launching capabilities only.
Right. But what will be the impact of the expansion of commercial space endeavors on existing government-led programs? Do you see an impact worth noting?
Well, I would say the private sector development is more of a conducive process. It can validate more new technologies, either re-entry, reusable, or engine technologies. Like methane technology, methane rockets are being tested by private sectors, and that are jointly developing satellite these technologies with the state-owned enterprises. So those are good things and conducive, rather than competing. And you can mature some of the technologies using full-funded private sectors, and those technologies can also be used for future missions. So this has always been good things to encourage private sectors to get involved in space programs.
Will the participation of private sectors also encourage some of the transformation of what would otherwise be exclusively space technology? Professor Yang, you gave some great examples of what used to be exclusively space technology, but now everyday commodities, and people benefit from the process of transformation. Do you think the involvement, the participation of private sectors will encourage that process? And what exciting transformation could we be expecting in the short to middle term?
Well, that according to the opinions of the China government, we don't compete with the other countries, so we don't engage in any space race. So we develop our space program only according to our own needs, to develop our high technology to promote our national economy and our daily life. But that on the commercial field, you see that they do have competitions between different companies. So these kind of competitions, we can name that as a good competition, because this kind of competition can bring the innovation in technology and also can bring the reduction of cost. So I think it's a good thing to see both state-owned companies and private companies engaged in this field. I have a very special example. You see that the first private company in China achieving an orbital launch is come from the Parabola rocket, solid rocket, comes from the Beijing Interstellar Glory company. You all also know that I come from a state-owned company, and I have a payload on board this rocket. So you see that although do have some competitions, but we also have cooperations, because I made the satellite and they made rocket, so we can cooperate together. So this kind of competition in commercial field, as Yan-Song has mentioned, will be very intensive, but it's a good competition. As I emphasized, it can bring the innovation. Okay, we can just heard from the front about the status report.
Usually what happens right now, we still saw some staff working at the launch tower. When will they be pulling back from the tower?
Well, you see that, as your colleagues at the front has already mentioned, there are several rotational platforms. So we'll, after the checking of the status of the Long March 2F rocket, carrier rocket, we will turn some arms open. And then you see that, as I mentioned, there are many critical steps. For instance, the transfer of the power supply, switching from the ground supply to the vehicle itself, and also the checking of the telemetry system. So after some checking, we will open another one. So finally, after all the platforms are opened, we will also, at this moment, still have rotational arms, not the platforms, close to the vehicle. And on these arms, we also have pipes and also the cables to control or provide the gas, provide the power supply.
The platforms will open later, so will the retractable arms attached to the rocket. Now, as the current vehicle for China's manned missions, the Shenzhou-13 spacecraft is generally seen as a continuation of its predecessor, both in terms of appearance and functions. But there's one key difference, as CGTN's Liu Jiaxing explains.
China plans to launch 4 manned spacecraft during the 2-year construction phase of its new space station. They're called the Shenzhou-12, 13, 14, and 15.
The 4 ships from Shenzhou-12 to Shenzhou-15 are basically the same. This is the principle of our design. If the ships are different from one another, the ground control can be confusing. We want the ships to be stable.
Basically the same, but there are subtle differences, as engineers learn more from each mission. Insiders say the Shenzhou-13 spacecraft has an eye-catching new docking method.
If all goes well, after Shenzhou-13 spacecraft enters orbit, it will independently and quickly dock with the Tiangong core module from the radial direction. And then it becomes part of a combination with Tiangong core module, Tianzhou-2, and Tianzhou-3 cargo ship.
The spacecraft will follow the track that's behind and below the station, catch forward towards the radial docking port. After that, it will pitch 90 degrees and then roll 180 degrees so it can go straight ahead.
Experts say such flexible docking technologies will provide more room in the space station and help with the remainder of the construction phase. Liu Jiaxing, CGTN, Jiuquan Satellite Launch Center.
All right, let's get back to our studio guests here. We talked a lot about the possible cooperation and collaboration between private and public sectors when it comes to space endeavors. But what about what's going to happen on this mission? We talked a little bit about what to expect in terms of technological and scientific experiments. Professor Yang, let's pick up the conversation with you now. We do know that a lot of the technology verification that was carried out on the Shenzhou-12 last time, we will build on that. So the experiments that will be carried out this time, how will they differ from the ones carried out on Shenzhou-12 mission, and what new technology will be tested and verified this time?
Well, you know that the Shenzhou-13 mission is the last mission during the technology verification phase. So in this phase, we will test all the technologies which has not been used before. For instance, we have already mastered the crew transportation technology, the extravehicular technology, and the rendezvous and docking technology before the launch of the Tiangong-1. But all these three fundamental technologies of manned space activity, not all the necessary technology for building a space station. For instance, we've already tested the long-term residence in space by the Shenzhou-12 mission, but only 3 months. So this time, 6 months is quite different. Although it has already been tested effective our measures to counter the microgravity influence to the weakening of our muscles, of the loss of bones or loss of calcium, and also the weakening of our neural system. But 6 months is quite different. In the future, you know that the routinary change of our expedition team will be 6 months. So it is necessary to test that first. Our measures is the treadmill, the space bicycle, and also other things if these kind of measures are okay. And also nutrition is a very, very important thing. We've already talking about the menu of their daily life, but also we should have other restrictions and considerations about the calcium and also the energy in their everyday life. So we must follow the suggestions and those from the ground staff. And moreover, you see that we have also some very complex tasks during this Shenzhou-13 mission. You know that today's launch, after this launch, it will be the first time for China Aerospace to dock with the space station from a radio docking pod or the Earth-facing docking pod. This is quite different. You know that during the years before, we have docked from the front docking pod or from the rear docking pod. Theoretically speaking, this kind of docking, the approaching spacecraft are in the same orbit of the target. But if you dock from the bottom, because the altitude is different, so theoretically speaking, they are in a different orbit, and this relative position is not stable one. So there is a very critical requirement to the whole approaching procedure from this kind of docking. You know that during the leaving of the Shenzhou-12 crew, they also partially test this technology. So they performed the approaching process from the bottom, but not dock. So this time we will actually perform this one. We may also notice that although you know that the only manual dockings by China Aerospace is performed by the Shenzhou 9 crew, Mr. Liu Wang, and the Shenzhou 10 crew by Mr. Ni Haisheng. But you know that Miss Wang Yaping is also a member of the Shenzhou 10 crew. So she was trained before about the manual docking. And also you may notice that she is also the backup crew of Shenzhou 12. So we can believe that she has a lot of practice on this kind of training, as well as Mr. Jia Zhigang. So if anything wrong happened to the automatic docking system, as Yan Song has mentioned, we can switch to the manual docking and ensure the safety and the reliability of the whole approaching procedure.
This is all fascinating. I do want to pick your brain on one specific thing about that robotic arm, which was a big feature of the EVAs the last time, because they relied on the arm to install devices and to help them carry out a lot of their work in those spacewalks. Will there be new tasks involving the robotic arm this time? And will it be how often is the robotic arm working automatically compared to manually?
Well, you know that this time our EVA will have a very, very important task to install an adapter between what we call the big arm and the small arm. You see that the current arm on board the core module is a big arm with a length about 10 meters. In the future, after the Wentian module is launched, it will take a second arm called the small arm with a length of 5 meters. And it is very interesting that these arms can come together to form a bigger arm about 15 meters long. So we need an adapter. At this moment, this time, the Shenzhou-13 crew will install this adapter or connector between the small arm and the bigger arm. So this is a very important preparation for the future operation of the station, as you mentioned. And also, there is a more important task for them. You see that at present, the Tianzhou-2 cargo spacecraft and the Tianzhou-3 cargo spacecraft are docking to the station. And this time, in the future, you can seldom see this configuration. This is because we are in the technology verification phase, and we need to test the technology, what we call the transfer technology, transfer the object from the front docking port to the side berthing port. So this is very important as a backup measure for the future construction of station. You know that the Wentian module and the Mengtian module should first dock to the front docking port and then transfer to the side berthing port. So this procedure, we must ensure the success rate. Usually, we use the transposition mechanism, which can be recognized as a very small robotic arm. This is a major measure. But we also have backup. If the transposition mechanism does not work, we still have the big arm to help the transfer. But we must test that first. So this time, our Shenzhou-13 crew will monitor this transfer. Maybe it is an automatic one, but it can be well monitored by the astronauts. And also, we will test the technology of remote operations, either by the ground crew or by the astronauts.
And you're now looking at the live picture of the control center. Earlier, we did see some weather data being shown up on that big screen up there. Wind speed is 4.3 meters per second. Temperature is 7.1 degrees Celsius, much cooler than the previous mission, Shenzhou-12 mission. Visibility 30 kilometers. Pretty nice weather for a launch. And you're now watching the special coverage of Shenzhou-13 spacecraft launch. 3 taikonauts will shortly be lifted into space as part of China's efforts to build its Tiangong space station.
They have entered the capsule and are ready for takeoff. Let's now take a quick look back.
出发！是，敬礼。
If you're just joining us here on CGTN, you're looking at live pictures there in Jiuquan. These are live images from the launch tower. We are now a little over an hour from liftoff. The 3-member crew has now been positioned inside the capsule, getting ready for the liftoff, which will happen in a little over an hour's time, an hour and 3 minutes to be exact.
And they will be staying there for 6 months this time. This is a long-term stay,
Double
right?
the time of the Shenzhou-12 crew.
And the scientists and engineers have prepared everything. Professor Yang, yesterday I heard this from, there's a major movement coming up. They're closing the hatch of the fairing.
Yes.
So this really signals we're entering the final preparations there.
Yes, and you know that usually at the T-minus 30 minutes, the ground staff will leave the launch complex. So this will be a very important procedure.
Have they completed the airtightness check of the entire
Of course,
spacecraft by
they
now?
already checked the airtightness of the both 2 hatches on the orbital module. So at this moment, the you know that this is not a very strict one for the panel, this panel on the payload fairing. So this will be the final step.
Sometimes the international community sign their fairings off, you know, when they close it.
Autograph.
Autograph.
But after in space, the fairing will be deployed, right? They will be burned off during re-entry.
But for SpaceX, they will recover their payload fairings. Maybe we will do this in the future. They will.
So
they use parachute.
Wow. Okay.
And a boat with a net, to catch it.
That's fascinating. Now back to our my first question back there. So I heard this from the press conference yesterday. They have prepared 4,800 backup plans in case of emergency happen at the space station. And in the worst case scenario, if the Shenzhou-13 spacecraft failed too, together with the space station, the ground staff could launch a rescue spacecraft to get our astronauts back. Professor Yang, talk to us about those emergencies that they could face up there when they're on board the space station.
As you mentioned, actually speaking, currently at this moment, our Shenzhou-14 spaceship and with together with Long March 2F Y-14 carrier rocket has already in the VAB, in the vehicle assembly building, is already there. So it is a backup for emergency rescue mission. But you know that during the Shenzhou-13 mission in orbit, there are many emergency cases that possibly can happen. For instance, the leakage is the most serious one. So the first thing first to ensure the safety of the lives of our astronauts.
Professor Yang, sorry to jump in here. We're now officially 1 hour from liftoff. As we understand, a 1 hour countdown to liftoff will be announced anytime now. Now, if you look at those light pictures we are getting to you, we can see that the first two groups of platforms will very soon be opening, revealing the rocket that will be launched in 1 hour's time. And later we will be able to get a full view of the rocket booster. We'll get all those live images to you as they become available. Let's also bring in CGTN reporter Ning Hong, who is near the launch site. Ning Hong, 1 hour till liftoff. What can you see? What's happening on the ground there?
Yes, it's 1 hour countdown, but if you could see the CCTV feeds that inside the launch pad, you could see that there are still engineers doing the last minute checks on the rocket. And now, not just the system and electric system or communication systems, people are using torchlights to check the surface of the rocket. And the CZ-2F rocket is so far the most reliable rocket that is especially designed to launch for manned space missions. And so far, it has sent 12 manned spaceships into space, and this is the 13th ship. And also in the meantime, this is the 1 hour countdown. So what is happening, what is going to happen now is that you can see the rotating platform has opened, the upper section has opened. And from now on, the rest part of the rotating platform will open one by one to reveal the rocket. And you could easily identify the rocket from other kinds of modules because it has a pointing head. That is the escaping tower for manned spaceships, and it will help the taikonauts to escape the rocket in time of emergency during the lift-off. And well, it's a little bit windy now, but according to weather reports, the best window will be 23 past 12 o'clock. That's less than 1 hour now. So we are all expecting, now the taikonauts are all inside the spaceship. And after 10 minutes after liftoff, and the spaceship will separate from the rocket and enter the orbit. And by then, we will know that it will be a successful mission. And that's what I found here. Back to you.
Ning Hong, appreciate that update. We hope to check back in with you later in the program. Now, as you heard, 1 hour to go before China's next mission to space. All three crew members have entered the space capsule. Final preparations are underway. Let's learn more about what's happening on the ground with our studio guests. In this 1 hour time, what will they be doing? The pictures show us that they are chilling in the capsule, all strapped in. They still have the manual open on their thighs. What are they doing at this moment?
Well, they will perform the audio check several times. This is very important to ensure a very smooth communication between the command center and the astronauts inside the cabin. This is first. So as I mentioned, they also will check the when they close their helmet, they will check the tightness of the aviation spacesuit. And also, you know that as you already mentioned, maybe at T-minus 45 minutes, they will check the safety belt if it is well fastened. And also, that at this moment, not only the astronauts are preparing, they have a lot of work to do, but also we have some very critical tasks for the rocket and also for the Shenzhou spacecraft. That at this moment, the environmental control and the life support system is already working. So currently speaking, the working of the spacecraft is based on the power supply from the cables connected to the ground. And several minutes later, maybe it will be the power will change, switched from the ground to the batteries on board the Shenzhou spaceship. And also at the meantime, the rocket is also checking its own status. For instance, the telemetry system, the servo units on the rocket engines, and also the pressure inside the fuel tanks. So after this kind of check, also there was some changing or switching of the status. For instance, the power supply, maybe some system from the ground to the vehicle itself, and also and so on. As I mentioned, the last one will be rotated away, will be the arms, which have some service cables and pipes to the vehicle.
But now, as we speak, the umbilical tower is still providing power to the rockets, right? And now they're sitting inside the spacecraft. Talk to us about any innovations or upgrades we are seeing on the Shenzhou-13 spacecraft, Mr. Xu. Have there been any innovations compared to the previous ones?
Well, innovations in terms of spacesuit, in terms of electronic components and the power supply systems, and all have been upgraded from the previous version. Of course, we need, like Jiuquan have mentioned that the power supply, and also you mentioned it's from umbilical cores, still from the ground, but you need a pretty large battery to provide the power for the astronauts. What they're seeing with the lights, the instrument itself, the oxygen flow, the temperature control, all of these needs to have a very good and powerful battery to support it.
Right.
And once you leave the ground, you rely on the battery pack that you carry on board, and that is all true before you extend the solar array to collect more powers from the sun. So the battery is very important for this mission. In particular, for manned mission, you need life support system to work.
Right.
And that's based on power.
Yeah, speaking of that, because this is a long-term mission, they cannot just bring up all the oxygen and water. They will need to stay up there. They have to rely on regenerative life support. How does it work?
Exactly. And discussing as it sounds, but you need to recycle everything. Even urines and everything. So
your urine.
Yeah.
So
Not directly, but
waste.
there's a system of ecological, and system to recycle everything, but to maximize usage of all of that. But the good thing is that we still have the Tianzhou cargo ship that is coming up with the fresh fruits. You can't recycle that. Like an apple or something, but you can plant something, some vegetable that can grow very quickly in 30 or 40 days that is edible. And still we're in the experimental process. Lots of universities are doing this, they close the environment and they grow vegetables and they stay there, for a sustained period of time. For example, Beijing's lunar experimental capsule, and they have 3 students there for 6 months. And they grow their own plants, and they use the solar powers and everything.
So what happens to those garbage? How do they handle garbage and also dirty laundry? They don't get to wash clothes up there, right? How do they handle that?
How do they handle that? I mean, dirty laundries.
Well,
do they just throw them away?
For instance, our excrement must be dried, and also some antivirus there to ensure that there do not have hazardous gas. And for the urine, it is a different matter. We use the so-called vapor compression distillation device, which can vaporize the urine and get the pure water from the urine. And then that we can also have condensation water from the our sweat and from the water vapor inside our those we breathe out from our lungs. So all this water get from the condensation water and from the distillated water from the urine will be furtherly purified by some filters and other measures, and then it can be drinkable. So, but it is maybe not necessary for you to drink it, but we can use this water to produce oxygen with electricity. And also, not only the electricity, not only the oxygen can be breathed by the astronauts, but the hydrogen produced by the water can also be used to get oxygen from the carbon dioxide we collected from those by the astronauts.
I have a lot of respect for our astronauts up there.
Absolutely.
Now, the 3 taikonauts will conduct a series of scientific experiments during their 6-month stay, and that needs good teamwork. They have been trained in tactic cooperation techniques and are confident they can successfully complete the mission.
The Shenzhou-13 crew will have to perform 2 to 3 spacewalks. To get ready for that, they all must undergo ground trainings and meet certain standards.
We have a female taikonaut in our group, and a woman's physique is very different from that of a man. So on the ground, she must be able to perform all the tasks, including the whole spacewalk procedure.
The 3 of us need to back each other up. We all must have the ability to operate the robotic arm or complete extravehicular crawling.
Jiuquan, the commander of the mission, performed China's first spacewalk during the Shenzhou-7 mission. As a senior taikonaut, Jai always shares his experiences with others during daily trainings.
Jiuquan is more like a teacher than a commander, and no matter what you do, he always encourages you and gives you confidence and energy.
Instructors often record videos of Jai's trainings for demonstrations. I did learn a lot from him.
This is Wang Yaping's second spaceflight and comes 8 years after she first went to space on the Shenzhou-10 mission. Wang earned the title of China's first space teacher after delivering a televised science lecture to an audience of over 60 million school children in 2013. She will give a second lesson during the Shenzhou-13 mission.
Wang is very good at computer operations, data transmission, and detailed tasks.
Wang is always positive, hardworking, and meticulous. She is also very careful, thoughtful, and understanding.
A new face in China's space mission. Ye Guangfu has actually been part of the program for 11 years.
Ye is familiar with computer operation and data transmission. He is smart and full of energy. He may have to play a larger part in scientific research.
Ye Guangfu is the first taikonaut to participate in the European Space Agency underground training course. His outstanding performance was very inspiring for other taikonauts. I feel very happy and honored to be able to work with him.
The Shenzhou-13 crew has also been reviewing the spacewalks performed during the Shenzhou-12 mission to get ready for the big day in space.
Now, an official from China's manned space project gave us more details about the training of the taikonauts.
6 months is long for space flight. It's very demanding on the astronauts' physical and mental health, knowledge and skills, ability to self-adjust, and deal with emergencies. This challenge is unprecedented for us. In response to this challenge, based on the original plan, we strengthened their physical training, including core strength and upper body strength training. Both male and female astronauts must have back and chest tolerance with 8 times their own weight. They have also enhanced their abilities to deal with the psychological challenge. And we trained the crew for what they would need to do during the 6 months. They will stay in a more complex space station. They have more tasks to perform and will spend longer time to maintain their living environment. They also need to master more space station technology, perform simulated spacewalks, operate a robotic arm, and conduct new experiments. We also took into account the increased probability of something going wrong during a 6-month flight. For example, the system may malfunction, people may get sick. We strengthened their training of emergency response and medical self-rescue.
As we've been telling you here on this broadcast, the Shenzhou-13 mission has a female crew member. Female astronauts have come a long way since the Soviet Union sent a woman to space nearly 6 decades ago. Let's now take a quick look at their journey.
In 1963, 2 years after Yuri Gagarin became the first man in space, the Soviet Union sent a woman up. Through that one journey, she logged more space time than all the US astronauts combined. Her photographs of Earth and the horizon were later used to identify aerosol layers within the atmosphere. Dubbed Gagarin in a skirt by Nikolai Kamani, the Soviet director of cosmonaut training, Valentina Tereshkova said her mission was much more than that.
We had been preparing for a female flight, but it was Korolov's decision not to risk women's lives because one of the women in the Space Corps already had a family.
In 1983, 20 years after Tereshkova, the US sent Sally Ride, its first female astronaut, into space during the 7th Space Shuttle mission. Since then, most female astronauts from the US have been working on the Space Shuttle. Judith Resnick, the second American woman in space, lost her life in the disaster of Space Shuttle Challenger. In 2007, Peggy Whitson became the first woman in charge of the International Space Station. However, despite much progress in the field, only 1 in 10 astronauts today are female.
One problem is women in the United States prefer to go into other studies more than engineering. We must encourage more girls to study math and science because we have to have enough students who've graduated with that degree.
In 2012, China sent its first female astronaut, Liu Yang, into space. In the crewed mission, with Jing Haipeng and Liu Wang, Liu supported her colleagues with space docking. She also carried out an experiment in space medicine.
Our astronauts need to train harder to improve our physical and psychological capabilities and skills to meet the highest standards and requirements of future missions.
Wang Yaping, crew member of Shenzhou-13, had her first space journey in 2013. She held the first space class there, talking to students on Earth about how objects move in zero gravity. May the universe be with you, ladies.
All of them have had so much hard training to get to where they are today. Let's continue our studio conversation with our guests here. How strenuous, Mr. Xu, was the training for all the taikonauts? They obviously had to train underwater to simulate that microgravity environment, but how long was the training? We know that this crew was selected in 2019. So they've been training for at least 2 years.
Well, more than that. The underwater part is the fun part, if you call it training, because lots of astronauts, after they retire, they become professional divers. They go to exotic places for diving experiences. Those are part of the training, what we call spin-off of the training. But the real training is on physical fitness, on psychological breakdowns and everything. That lasts longer than 2 years. The 2 years, after selection of the mission is focusing on the mission itself. Each and every move needs to be repeated and repeated and repeated. So you have to do a preparation training plus the mission training.
How do you train somebody's psychology? How do you prevent them from breaking down psychologically?
Well, I think there are many ways to do it.
Mock-up scenarios.
There are many simulations. There are more even psychological plus physical, and also there's a confined space. You have to stay in a sustained period of time. Isolations. It's in particular for one-man mission. This is very challenging for human bodies.
You have to respond well to those scenarios in order to become an astronaut, right? And those underwater training, Professor Yang, the flight commander, Jiuquan, actually said that the underwater training is more difficult than the actual EVA, the actual spacewalk. And they say training underwater for 5 or 6 hours is like running a full marathon. What kind of experience was that like?
You are correct. You see that the underwater training, or the what we call the neutral buoyancy pool training, will be the most ideal one to simulate the microgravity environment operation. But you see also there are differences. So we need the Marines to help the astronauts in this kind of trainings. You see that the difference of pressure between the inside the spacesuit and outside suit is about 40% of the atmosphere. So this is a very great pressure difference. You see that because of this existence of this pressure difference, it will be very difficult for you to even change the shape of your arm. So this is quite different to exhaust a lot of your strength. So for Yaping has already mentioned, at first she has not realized that it is so difficult. But after many trainings, she has come to used to this kind of training and always feel very cheerful after this kind of training. But during the first several trainings, they can even take up the chopsticks for her. So you can see how tough it is for her.
So female astronauts do get the exact same training as their male counterpart?
Yaping has a famous saying that the crucial space environment will not comfort you because you are a female.
Yeah, there's one question that I really want to ask, because I watched this interview with Wang Yaping, and she said apparently there is a red button that astronauts in training can press. If they can't take it anymore and the training will stop. But throughout the years, no astronaut training to be a taikonaut has ever pressed the button during training. Is that true? How does the red button work?
That's the G-force training. That's the tough one.
I mean, G-force, for G-force, for example, there is a certain G-force that you will break down and you will lose your consciousness. And then once you lose your consciousness, there's no point to press the red button. There's no way you can press it.
Has anybody ever passed out?
It's very easily. For ordinary people, maybe 6 or 7 G, you will pass out.
That's awful.
With a fast spin.
But they won't be enduring that much G-forces during this mission, right?
During launch,
what you mentioned is a normal condition. During the normal flight trajectory, the G-force is about 3 to 5 times your own weight. But that's the astronauts are trained not only according to the normal cases, but also they must meet the emergency cases. In emergency cases, they will have what we call the ballistic re-entry. During this re-entry, they will experience a G-force higher than 8 times your own mass.
Wow.
So they must be trained for this. And moreover, you see that there are 2 categories of astronauts. One has the capability of piloting the ship. For these astronauts, even at 8G, they must have a capability to have response. So we have some flash inside the beacons inside this training cabin, and also they have another button, so they have to respond to these beacons. So this is very important for them to have the capability to operate piloting the spaceship in emergency cases.
8 Gs. There's no way I can survive that G training.
And you see that during the first 2 flight missions of US are all suborbital missions, and they even experience more than 10 G.
Wow. Professor Yang, hold that thought. I'll be getting back to you in a few moments. A group of Chinese students have taken their passion for space and translated it into sound. Our next report tells us more about the innovation and the inspiration behind it.
Before infants see the world, they hear from inside their mother's womb. What are the sounds of the universe for mankind? In 2020, a dozen students specializing in aerospace, art, architecture, and music formed a team. Their aim: translate the universe into sound and music that we can hear. And this is their final product, a sonic art device. It consists of 2 parts. A small ball in a glass box randomly floats on a satellite, and a sensor captures its data. The satellite also collects real-time data of cosmic rays and transmits them to the Earth. A big ball on Earth simultaneously mirrors the one in space. The sound device then converts the cosmic rays into music using a special algorithm.
我们这个项目，它是一个对于太空交互装置，也是中国目前为止第一个尝试着在太空当中做太空与地面进行艺术交互，包括进行科普的这样一个项目。
The students say they got their inspiration from their childhood.
中国航天从小种下的一个萌芽，它逐渐 长大成一片森林的感觉。我还记得非常深刻的是，当时在初中的时候，是王亚平。
初中的时候，应该是2013年，航天员王亚平进行了一次太空授课，然后当时我是在读初二，当时航天员说我们在太空上的时候，其实还是受到了地球的重力加速度大概有7.8左右。然后既然航天员说有重力，那为什么没有掉下来呢？后来学了一些物理之后，也就理解了为什么是这样的，然后于是对这个航天方面也会感兴趣，最后就选择了这个专业。
飞天梦永不失重，科学梦张力无限。同学们，再见！再见！
For these students, rockets and space are special.
小时候听爸爸妈妈们说，就是天上有一颗星星是中国人的，它就是东方红1号。
China became the 5th country in the world.
在那里听过一段音乐，这么大体积的一个航空器运到上面去，也没有去说，在那里读个新闻联播，而是选择了放一段音乐，然后那一个感觉就是很触动我。我觉得中国人很有情怀。
我觉得人类本身的进步就是一种最大的浪漫。然后我觉得人类未来必然面对的困境就是地球上的资源枯竭，然后，这种困境使我们必然将脚步迈向更深的星辰大海。
我觉得中国航天一直在做的一件事情，就是这种探索未知的精神，它是给我们一种精神力量。这个东西到底能不能成，能做成什么样？到底火星能不能适合人居住？这些东西它不是有一个明确答案的，它是需要来回考量的。那这样一个状态，然后一直鼓舞着我们，这种状态是我比较向往。
All right, this is the live picture. You're looking at the Jiuquan Satellite Launch Center. This is the launch pad. As we speak, the launch tower has opened more. The level 1 has opened, revealing the stage 1 rocket and the side boosters of the rocket. As we get close to time 0, of course, we're close to T-minus 30 minutes. We're getting real close now. And you know, the previous Shenzhou-13 mission actually generated a lot of interest among people. People love to watch astronauts doing even nothing there.
Because they're having a 5-year hiatus before that manned flight.
Yeah, they're fascinated. You know, they're super interested in life on life in space. So, do they have a routine living in space? What factors were taken into consideration when deciding a routine for the astronauts living in space?
Well, as we know that the astronauts, once you're in microgravity environment, you lose your bone mass, calciums, your muscles, your cardiovascular system weakens, your nervous system weakens. Like Jiuquan said, your tongue will swollen. So there are many physical changes. So you have to adopt the space environment in appropriate ways for daily life. So we have just heard that there's 1 hour preparations. So the astronauts, once they're in space, they will be working and exercising and sleeping as a routine, similar to the timing of the ground. And they're adapting to such a timing so that there's a Beijing time, and they also wake in the Beijing time, and overnight they sleep at the same time. So they're working in synchronized way with the ground crew and supporting crew in the ground.
Right, and we do have a female astronaut this time. Are they preparing any, supplies, especially for the lady?
Well, I did heard that they shipped a lot of cosmetic products over there. Yes. And some of the beauty products are only for space ladies. So,
so makeup is not an inconvenience, right? They can wear makeup.
Apparently so.
On a daily basis.
And Yaping was mentioning in her interview that she said once you're in space, you're off the gravity of the ground, so nothing drags your face down. So
you actually look better,
you have a natural
younger.
beauty over there. Yes, you look younger.
It's beauty sleep every day for 6 months.
And in fact, as Jiuquan mentioned, that the blood flow changes. You have more blood on your face rather than foot.
But what kind of impact will it have, on their psychological status living there for 6 months?
You know that although the Tiangong is the biggest spacecraft of China, is a volume about 50 cubic meters, but still it is a narrow place for 3 crew. So stay in a very narrow place can cause many psychological problems. That is what we discussed, that to have both men and women in the crew to will be easier for us to solve these kind of psychological problems. You see that this is very useful and it is part of the scientific research. In the future, you know that the low Earth orbit and the moon will not be the final stop of human being. We will go to the Mars sooner or later. So the one trip to Mars will cost for about spend for about more than 1.5 years. During this mission, we will get more challenging psychological problems. So it is believed that we should have both female and male astronauts inside the crew cabin. So before that, we should test this on the low Earth orbit. So the space station will be a very ideal place to test what you mentioned, how to solving the psychological problems.
And as we speak, you know, the top level and the bottom level of that launch tower has opened. You're seeing the escape tower looking from afar like a lightning rod, really. But it's 8 meters tall. It's smaller compared to the whole rocket, but it's still huge compared to my height.
The Long March 2F, the total length is about 58 meters. And you may notice that the rotational platform on the top has already been opened. And the emergency escape tower has already exposed to the open space.
Right.
So at a certain moment, maybe several minutes later, there will be validation of the emergency escape. You know that when the ground staff is on the launch complex, usually it is not allowed to switch on this emergency
Sorry
escape
to jump
system.
in here, Professor Yang. We are 30 minutes away until a liftoff. We should expect an official announcement confirming the countdown. We understand the ground staff are being cleared from the launch pad. This is T-minus 30 minutes. Let's get an update from CGTN reporter Ning Hong, who is near the launch site and who is watching all these developments on the ground there. Ning Hong, what are you watching now? What is happening?
Well, yes, it's 30 minutes countdown, and you can see now the lower section of the rotating support platform has opened, and I believe we will soon see that the entire rocket will be revealed. And now people are now making the final preparations, including evacuating from the launch pad. You can see now. You see, you can hear there's a speaker telling people at the launch site that this is the voice from the commander of the zero commander. He will be responsible for launching the rocket, the final countdown. And now they're checking the systems, and what we are going to see now is that the rocket will be standing by about 150 meters, about 150,000, 100 meters away from us. And also, I want you to pay attention to the rocket itself, because since Shenzhou-13, for every manned spaceship launched, there will also be a manned spaceship as a backup standing by. So the Shenzhou-13 and also the CZ-2F rocket are actually the backup of Shenzhou-12. For rocket standing up there, preparing for emergency for so long, it's quite a difficult thing to change it into a rocket right now. So the rocket has go through very thorough examination and testing just to make sure that it will satisfy the need of this mission. And for every step people take here is making history. Yeah, back to you.
And we'll appreciate that update from on the ground there. If you're just joining us here on CGTN, we are less than 30 minutes away from liftoff. These light pictures show that some of the platforms have opened. More are opening as we speak, revealing the rocket that will carry another 3-person crew to China's space station.
And they're opening at a relatively slower speed. Why are they doing it in such a
They're
slow
already quite quick, because
Really?
this is operated pneumatically with pneumatic mechanism, and then they open gradually. Before they open, they have to make sure that all essential connections are still maintaining connected, and this is only disconnected at the last minute. So you can still see some umbilical cords, some cables, and some connections, and some holding devices are still there. But in fact, this the rocket is holded on the bottom side and is kept in such a balanced way. It does not use the robotic arm to hold it.
Yeah, this is the close-up shot of the rocket, and for that segment, I think the spacecraft is encased in that part, right?
Exactly. On top is the fairing part, and it is still encaged because some of the ground crews are still there. The last crew leaves T-minus 15 or 14 minutes. So they're still, a couple of guys are still there just in case they need it. They have to attend the crew once it's there. You see that the top part is also opening up. So we're seeing that the crew probably has just left it, and this is in preparation for the real launch.
It is so interesting for such a mega project to take place. It is so quiet right now on the launch pad and in the environment around it. It almost immediately commands, a solemn atmosphere. You are in awe of what's going to happen with this launch.
And earlier we saw two Chinese characters on the rocket, meaning Shenzhen, literally means divine arrow. That's the nickname of the Shenzhou spacecraft, the divine vessel. And that name was given by former President Jiang Zemin. Only on a Long March 2F rocket would you see the two Chinese characteristic in gold there.
The Long March 2F is the only human-rated launch vehicle of China, because the reliability is the highest, which have a malfunction detection system. And also with the emergency escape system, it can raise the safety of the astronaut from about 97 to 98% to 99.7%, which means that for 1,000 launch, only in 3 cases, maybe it will have some malfunction threatens the lives of the astronauts. So this is very important. And in the future, that because Long March 2F belongs to the old generation of China's launch vehicles, and the new generation launch vehicle is in development. Some of them will be also a new human-rated launch vehicles to rely its reliability for human launch.
As a matter of fact, all the Shenzhou missions or all the Chinese space station missions are being completed by the Long March 2F, Long March 7, Long March 5B rockets, right?
Exactly.
Talk to us about the difference between the three.
Well, Long March 5B and Long March 7 belongs to the new generation launch vehicles, which use environmental friendly propellants. These use kerosene and oxygen, or the combination of liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen. So these the productions of these propellants are water and carbon dioxide. So it's not toxic and not corrosive, which is quite different from the propellant used by this Long March 2F. The Long March 2F use UDMH, or unsymmetrical dimethyl hydrogen, as a fuel, and use nitrogen tetroxide, or NTO, as the oxidizer. So the NTO is highly corrosive, and the UDMH is highly toxic. So these are not very environmental friendly, but easier to use because they work in the room temperature. This called the hyperbolic propulsion systems, which belongs to the old generation. So in the future, it is a trend to use the environmental friendly propellants like the new generation. And the Long March 5B is used to launch the Wentian module, the Mengtian module, and the Xuntian modules. All these have the mass of about, the Wentian and Mengtian have the mass about more than 20 tons. So the only launch vehicle in China is the Long March 5B.
That's the most powerful rocket.
Exactly, and the biggest payload factor with a diameter of about 5.2 meters, the biggest one. And also the Long March 7 is used for launching of the cargo spacecraft, the Tiangong spacecraft. So it is very powerful and also can have a capability about 13 to 14 tons to the low Earth orbit. Both Long March 7 and Long March 5B can only be launched in the Wenchang spacecraft launch site.
So this rocket, Long March 2F, is the least powerful of the three. Am I right?
No, not
necessarily.
Not the least powerful. That it also, you may notice that it has 4 boosters. So it is a mid-sized launch vehicle in China, but it is used for launching low Earth orbit payload. It has 2 versions. For this, launching a crewed spaceship, the capability is about 8.1 tons. For those launching, for instance, Tiangong 1 and Tiangong 2, okay, the capability is 8.5 tons because it don't have an emergency escape system.
I believe we have a full visual of the Long March 2F rocket as the platforms have all opened.
Yeah, the interesting part of this 3 rockets that you mentioned is they are also assembled and integrated and shipped vertically. In comparison with previous rockets where horizontal assembly and integration and then vertical launch, this is shipped vertically from the AIT center, so vertically transport to the launching pad itself. And so these are, the purpose of this is because the launching status is vertical. So everything, every component, every subsystems has to be vertically viable before launch. So this is maintaining the same status as we prepare to launch it. So this is more safe and more practical in the international community.
So now, this is a common practice.
Yes, it's common practice in even in Europe and US, because vertical assembly is more, more closer to the status where you're going to launch it. And that's
what Yansong mentioned. We call this triple vertical mode. The assembly them vertically and transfer them vertically and launch them vertically. So the triple vertical. But for the Long March 7 and Long March 5B you mentioned, it's called the new triple vertical mode, because not only these procedures are vertical, but also the connection, because there is a very small service tower on the mobileable platform. So all the cable connections and the pipe connections are also do not change in the VAB and in the launch pad. So this is more convenient for usage.
Well, the first Long March 2F rocket was actually launched in 1999, right?
Exactly.
Have there been any upgrades?
Of course, there are many upgrades every time. You see that at that moment, our launch vehicle is the maiden flight is to test the whole the launch complex and compatibility with the launch vehicle itself and the test vehicle Shenzhou-1. But only after some improvements in this launch vehicle, we can launch Mr. Yang Liwei into orbit in 2003. After that, we also have some improvement in the, for instance, the inertial measurement unit, and also with the telemetry support system. You know that during the early launches, we still don't have the Tianlian data relay satellite. Today, we can have the Tianlian data relay satellite, which can provide us greater coverage of the telemetry support. So this is quite different, and this is very unique, very helpful for ensure our safety.
It's T-minus 19 minutes, 53 seconds. We're getting really close. I mean, how reliable can we say this rocket is? A few upgrades have been made to the Long March 2F rocket to improve reliability and safety of a launch. Recently, Mr. Xu, talk to us. What are they?
Yeah, I mean, once you have a safe and working system, you don't tend to change it and upgrade it, periodically. You tend to freeze the status, hardwares and softwares. There's a saying, if you upgrade a software in one point, there's a 15% chances you get a fault alarm or fault bad part in other parts. So it's a complete system. Once it's completed, technically you freeze that status, and this is why we're still using the same fuel system. UDMH, nitrogen tetroxide, are not so friendly. Toxic, corrosive, but it's safe and it works in room temperature. And once it automatically combusts without even ignitions. So there are many things that we tend to freeze it and not to upgrade it. Maybe we develop a new system, and like a new generation capsule I've just mentioned, need a new launch vehicle that will have another system. Like Yuguang said, this is a only human-rated launch vehicle and needs to be maintained in such a stable way that safety comes priority, not propulsion, not a powerful engine. This is 8 metric ton capability to low Earth orbit in comparison with Long March 5, which is 25. So safety has been considered as priority.
At this stage, the 3 Taikonauts have pretty much finished up everything in terms of preparation, right? We've seen visuals of them positioned in the capsule. They still have that manuals in their hands, but they're not reading it anymore. They are waiting for that final moment before liftoff.
You may notice that although the rotational platform has already turned over and we can see the whole launch vehicle, but still you may notice there are some still arms close to the vehicle.
What are those for?
These arms have the cables to have the signals. We can get every important telemetry data from the launch vehicle and from the spaceship and to check if everything is okay. And also we have power supplies to the last of some critical systems, for instance, such as the control system. And also you see that we can also provide gas to the pressurization system. At current stage, all the fuel tanks of the Shenzhou of the Long March 2F is pressurized and is in the right pressure. Also, this pressure is well monitored. So only in the last several seconds we can see the rotation of these arms.
You'd also talk to us about this mission. What are the most difficult parts? Mr. Xu earlier mentioned this is more like a renovation mission rather than a scientific experiment mission. Is that right?
In this mission, you know that this will be the first female EVA of China. We have already carried the third EVA spacesuit by the Tiangong-3 cargo ship to our station. This spacesuit is dedicated especially for Yaping. So it is smaller than the former two EVA spacesuits. So this time Yaping can be very comfortable. I can still remember that, you know, that we only have limited numbers of training spacesuits near the neutral buoyancy pool. So every time, you know, that Yaping's feet is smaller than his male colleagues. So she needs some adaptations.
He started to jump in. We have to mention that is now T-15 minutes ahead of launch.
And ground staff have been evacuating from the site, meaning that all preparations have finished.
We're entering the final stages there. It is pretty quiet. Nothing much going on in the comm system. I suppose they have finished all the final status checks by now.
Actually speaking, everybody is busy now. You know, that's the launch.
Yeah, an official announcement confirming the countdown of 15 minutes. We're 15 minutes away from liftoff.
But just bear in mind that after ignition, it takes only 8 minutes.
It's a pretty short flight.
You know, that's the launch procedure is coordination of a big system between many systems. So you may notice the voice between the zero commander with other systems. For instance, the ground stations in other places, either in China or outside China. And also we have space tracking ships on the Pacific and the Indian Ocean. So all these systems must be in a very good condition.
You see the ground crews are leaving. So that's the last crew that leaves the launch complex.
So after this point, no ground staff will be at that launch power.
The rocket is fully armed and it's ready to be ignited. So very dangerous at this moment. As Jiuquan mentioned, there are more than 400 metric tons of fuels and oxidizers on board. So it's like a bomb.
It's a violent energy exchange.
Yes.
So there will be no staff in a radius of how much?
Well, this last group, because the control center is about 7 or 8 kilometers away from the launch complex, but launching witness can be done 2 kilometers away. So there's a mathematical calculation that you don't get hit it.
Our correspondent Ning Hong there might have a better vantage point than us.
Yes, I believe he does.
Yeah, but in fact, in Jiuquan is the closest that you can get to a launch vehicle. Last time I was there to see a Long March 2D launch, I even got some debris on top of my head. You know, they dropped something on your head.
How far away were you?
I was about 1.7 kilometers away. That was
that's considered
very
a
close.
safe
Very
distance.
close. Yeah, that was considered very. But these
very noisy.
Yeah, very noisy. Yeah, heart pounding. I just saw a launch yesterday from Taiwan. They launched our Absco satellite, and also it's very shocking if you're one kilometer away from.
Well, the final ignition time has already been confirmed.
And it's down to the seconds, right?
Yeah, correct. Down to second. You know that the trajectory must be carefully calculated several times and updated, because we should consider the relative position with the launch site and also our Tiangong space station. Because the target is the Tiangong space station, we must consider the relative position. And the basic requirement for the launch vehicle is to, when it comes into the orbit, it must in the same orbital plane with the Tiangong, because this is the most important requirement. But usually they are in different places. So that is why we choose a lower orbit than the Tiangong. So because in a lower orbit, it can rotating around the Earth faster. So the Shenzhou spaceship, after it coming into orbit, will be the chasing vehicle, chase the Tiangong space station within several hours. And then when it's chasing up, it can dock with the station.
And remember last time we were covering the launch of Tianzhou-3, you mentioned that launch window was a narrow launch window instead of zero launch window. What about this one?
Yes, this is also adopt today we use not the zero launch window any longer, because the technology has been improved. Now we can choose a narrow launch window, which provides the possibility, feasibility to other systems, but with a more strict requirement to the launch vehicle itself or to the algorithms and the control system.
But for now, the rocket is expected to launch. They are aiming to launch the rocket at 23 minutes, 53 seconds past midnight Beijing time here. It's down to the seconds.
It's a very precise window of opportunity.
There you have it.
That's been meticulously calculated, as you heard from our guest, Professor Yang Yuguang, in the studio. We are now about 10 minutes away from liftoff.
You know that it is very interesting that China and other countries use different definitions. In our China, the time zero means the ignition. But for US, for instance, for the launch of space shuttle, the time zero means that the lift off. So the ignition is just several seconds before the lift off.
Right. There is a narrow gap there.
Yeah, but the number is very important. What we call the root parameters that you change. You calculate a lot of things according to it. The trajectories, the inertials, many things that navigation is based on this exact timing.
Again, live pictures from inside the capsule where the three taikonauts have been seated and are bracing for liftoff.
A nerve-wracking moment, actually,
Absolutely.
for us who are watching. I mean,
my hands are getting sweaty right now. My palms are getting sweaty just watching this. We know we've done this before. We did this only a couple months ago. But still, it gets nerve-wracking every time with the countdown.
And it gives me goosebumps every time I watch a rocket launch.
Yeah, you can imagine that there's a huge team behind the astronauts. There, you see three astronauts, but the ground crew, the control center, the Beijing center, the TTNC boat, their whole team of ground control systems, observations and tracking and controls. There are thousands of people that are currently working, just like we are, to see the historic moment.
You know, there might be just the three of them right now on that pad in that rocket, but they're not alone. And they know this. They know that they have the backing of, an entire team.
Yeah, they're relying on the team to get them out there safely, because things are basically out of their hands by now. There's nothing much they can do.
As Professor Yang mentioned, this is a system engineering program. You have a rocket system that we're going to see just going to be lighted up, but there's also 7 other systems that you don't realize very easily, like life support system, astronaut system, recovery system, TTNC system, and they're complete system that has to work simultaneously to make this work.
Everything has to go right.
Everything has
for
to come
a successful
together
mission. Yeah.
For that to happen.
Is that the moon we're seeing?
Yeah, I think so.
Quite a clear sky. We can see the moon. Good visibility. like I mentioned, 30 kilometers for the visibility.
Yeah, Qiuyan, you've been there before. You know that, especially in summer, the sky of the Jiuquan Satellite Launch Center is really clear,
majestic.
and we can even see the Milky Way there.
The stars, the moon.
I think the site is chosen for its seldom precipitations. There's not much rain there, so you see clear skies. And if it's not windy and sandy, it's a good day for launch.
Yan Song has already mentioned the rain. The rain is a limitation, a restriction to the launch. So the wind should not be too strong, and also it is not suggested to launch during the raining. And after several seconds after liftoff, actually speaking about 12 seconds after the liftoff, we will have a very important operation pitch over to change the flight directions to the eastward. Actually speaking, several degrees to the also to the southeast. This is because you know that the latitude of the Jiuquan Satellite Center is about 40 degrees to the north, and our orbit is about 41.5 degrees the inclination. So this determines the direction in which direction the rocket should fly.
So, we often discuss weather conditions on the day of the launch. So the most important thing, is it no precipitation as
no thunderstorms.
No thunderstorms.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not much strong wind in this particular site wind. Otherwise, it'll blow it off.
And that can be predicted as they determine the day to launch?
There are meteorological service system that is just for this space.
But how accurate is that?
It has to be very accurate.
Yeah,
it has to be very accurate.
The weather forecasting system is a very important part of the what we call the launch site system. And that's the not only the wind speed in the troposphere, but also in the stratosphere must be in a very very strict limitation.
This is T-minus now 5 minutes ahead of launch. Soon we'll hear the call out from the control center. And you can see the face shield of these astronauts are still up. I suppose they will close the face shield momentarily. And the robotic arms are still attached to the rocket.
Yeah, they're still open their face shield because they can still communicate minutes before the launch. And like you have just mentioned, they're holding a book in their hands. And you can notice that it's still on the first page. I mean, it's a thick book for 60 days, maybe, not just for launch. So for every day, probably they have 1 or 2 pages that they have to conduct.
Usually several minutes. Okay, T-minus 5 minutes and counting. Usually several minutes before the launch, also the ground commander will also confirm whether the astronauts are okay for the launch, go for launch. So they will also check their own status, not only the ground staff. So if anything wrong happened, they can halt the whole launching procedure.
Yeah.
They're doing something now. They're
fixing their safety belts.
Fold their legs. They cannot stretch it anymore. So this is the bracing position.
The basin,
it is like a basin.
They are putting down the shields, are they?
Yes, they're fastening their seatbelt. I think seatbelt, and they're in the folding position. Before that they were stretching their legs. So this is T-minus 5. That means that they have to be ready and helmet down, I think.
That's the live picture of the Beijing Aerospace City. Officials there are watching. There you see Vice Premier of China,
yes,
Han Zheng there.
Top Chinese officials are watching the launch from control rooms. Chinese Vice Premier Han Zheng and the Vice Chairman of China's Central Military Commission, Xu Qiliang, are at the Beijing Control Center, while CMC Vice Chairman Zhang Youxia is at the Jiuquan Launch Center.
The Vice Premier was also there for the launch of the Shenzhou-13
Yes,
mission.
he was.
Really showing that how important they see these missions. There you see the Vice Chairman of the Central Military Commission, Mr. Xu Qiliang. He is watching the launch right there at the Jiuquan Satellite Launch Center, along with other scientists, engineers, and military personnel.
This is on top of the balcony that the astronauts stay in. So that is the complex about 7 kilometers away from the launch complex. So I used to witness some of the launches over there on the top. There's a huge platform and you can stay on top. And there's a room that with the TVs, they can see this real status.
And you can hear the loud sound there during the launch.
But that travels quite a few seconds before you get
President
the sound
Hu
get
Jintao
there.
watches the launch of the Yang in 2003.
There you see face shields down, ready in position.
And we are 2 minutes away from liftoff.
And the books are off.
The books are off. A lot of my attention is on the books.
What do you think is going through their minds right now? They look pretty composed, pretty calm.
Send me to space.
Send me to space. I cannot wait. I've waited long enough. I've waited long
10
enough.
years for Jiuquan.
Can they talk to each other at this point? Can they hear each other?
They can do so.
Okay.
Yeah, but electronically with the microphone.
Yeah.
I'm still wondering if they have blue teeth. Maybe it's a new thing for them.
Maybe not compatible with our common Bluetooth, but also some similar
secured,
radio
secure
communication, with different frequency.
Very soon, we're going to see some critical final movements. The umbilicals will detach from the rockets approximately 40 seconds ahead of launch.
The water will be poured at the bottom.
Yeah, that's the call out T-1.
Countdown.
An incredible moment to witness. Yeah.
This is the moment.
Truly a magnificent view there. 50 seconds.
50 seconds. And it never gets old.
And there you have it, the opening of that retractable robotic arm.
The arms are open.
The rocket is completely on its own, ready to take off.
30 seconds till
Blast
liftoff.
off.
Looks like a moonshot. Ready.
20 seconds away. I'm leaving my favorite part of the countdown to you, Jiuquan. You want to do the honor?
Sure.
10-second countdown.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. Together. 3, 2, 1.
Ignition.
There we go.
You see some white boards falling off. Is that considered normal? That's
Yes. That
protection
keeps the temperature.
shield, right?
Yeah. Power is clear.
All right, we're going to see a number of critical stages throughout the flight. We're going to be walking you through each and every one of them, starting with the pitch over.
That's the moonshot.
Very soon.
Yes.
So this is a camera mounted on the carrier rocket.
View of the side boosters. If everything goes right momentarily, we're going to see the jettison of the escape tower, right?
No, yes.
About 120 seconds.
So that's the first critical movement we're going to see.
Exactly.
This is the infrared view of the rocket. Everything is going well.
The taikonauts look fine to me.
They are experiencing the G-forces now.
How many G-forces are they enduring for now?
The maximum is during the separation of the first stage, about 3 to 5 G.
All right.
So this tends to be a period where they can experience discomfort in the flight.
Yeah, as you mentioned, the G-forces are together with the vibration.
A movement, what we call a pogo, which is up and down movement. Faster and slow, like up and down. So that pogo is very uncomfortable.
Yeah, that is because we use the liquid propellant system.
Right. We're about 90 seconds into the flight.
Okay.
Once again, you're seeing the bright flame of the side boosters,
picking up
first
speed.
stage rocket.
So the emergency escape tower will be jettisoned soon.
Yeah. It has already completed the pitch over, right?
Yeah. About 12 seconds after liftoff.
You see the escape tower and then the strap-on booster.
Oh, that's the 3D animation of this flight. That's based on real telemetries.
Okay,
there
great.
you go.
Yeah.
That's the escape
tower jettisoned.
At about 153 seconds will be the separation of the 4 strap-on boosters.
Yes. And that separation we just saw there really indicates a successful initial lower level flight. They were doing okay.
Not until the first separation of the first stage. We'll see this one will be happening anytime.
Right. I think it's happening now.
Separate soon.
The boosters will come off momentarily.
Of course, this is the most dangerous part, right, of the launch. Okay.
Boosters are off.
Booster separation.
And then first stage separation.
And then the first stage separation.
You see the 4 light part, that's the strap-on booster.
Yes.
The first stage is
5
already
bright
separated.
dots over there. The 4 little dots are the boosters. The 1 bigger dots are the first stage rocket.
With
So
each
at
stage
about
accomplished,
210 seconds will be the separation of the payload, jettisoning of the payload fairings, because the altitude is already very high. So at this moment, the aerodynamic forces is already become weaker and weaker because the max Q has already been passed.
I believe you're getting a visual of the second stage engine. And
The
this
second
is
stage
the
has,
view inside the fairing.
Yeah. The second stage has a main engine with a thrust about 75 tons and 4 vernier engines to control its attitude.
On the left side, you can see it's folded solar panel. So the fairing has been separated.
Successful
So
deployment
this
of
is the
fairing.
folded solar array that is going to be deployed. So that's a camera feed looking at the solar array. So.
Yes, and that's the exterior of the spacecraft, actually. Now the spacecraft is entirely exposed in space after the fairing
It's
opened.
already in outer space with no atmosphere. So fairing it doesn't help anymore.
it has already escaped the Earth's atmosphere at this point, right?
Yeah, it's already high enough. And Yaping at this moment can enjoy the sightseeing outside the window.
But it's all dark outside the window.
Yeah.
See, it's all dark.
But they will see daylight very soon, minutes. They're circling like 90.
They are flying eastward. So as Yan Song has mentioned, we will see because that it's in a different time zone. We can see the working conditions of the rocket engines on the second stage.
Right. And for a first-time traveler, Ye Guangfu is pretty
Yeah, he's not
composed there. He hasn't even looked outside the window
I was
once.
going to say that. Probably because it's dark right now.
There's nothing much to see
There's
there.
not much to see. He's waiting for more light so he can get a better visual.
They're going to get the 0G in any moment now. So once you have a shutdown, they have a 0G very.
So when will be the time they endure the maximum?
When all the engines were shut down, they will experience the 0G. So there is an indicator inside the cabin.
Okay.
And you may notice that because now it is already in a vacuum condition, and the flame of the rocket engines, the shape is quite different from when it is lifting off.
And they look pretty all right to
I don't
me.
know how they do it. They look so cool, calm, collected.
Just as they're on the ground, no
Just
G-forces
as if
at
they're on
all.
the ground. It's amazing to look at.
The next critical movement we're going to see is the shutdown of the second stage engine and then the spacecraft separation.
Yes, first we will shut down the main engine, and then the 4 vernier engines.
Is there anything that the astronauts can do to offset the effect of high G-forces?
At this moment, as we mentioned, it is in the normal procedure, so the maximum G-force is only 3 to 5. So they have the capability to monitor the status of the spacecraft. And we can see from the animation just in the previous video that shows the radio beams of the ground stations to the vehicle. And at this moment, the videos we can see of the camera is downloaded to the ground stations. So the ground staff can also monitor the working conditions of the rocket engines.
And Flight Commander Jia Jiuquan is sitting in the middle, Wang Yaping over there, picking up her manual, taking a look at it again.
The book again. So I think the newcomer is testing when to have this 0G, and that he's so ready.
Well, that's the fun part, yes.
But with the 4 or 5Gs, it really doesn't affect too much the human bodies. You get the adrenaline, this thrill out of it. But human body can
That's
take...
the ultimate adrenaline thrill. That's the ultimate adrenaline
That is
rush.
for sure.
The maximum
human
human can take is 12 or 13 Gs.
And even more so for the first comer, for the first time traveler, Ye Guangfu, right? He's done years of training, but this time he won't be flying in a simulator no more. This is the real deal.
This is the real deal.
And only in the real flight, he can experience both the G forces and the vibration.
Looks like we have a good burn of the engine and the telemetry tracking is good. We're going to have a shutdown any moment.
Oh, we're hearing the call out.
Okay, the main engine has shut off.
Second stage shut down.
Now you can see the vernier engine, the 4 vernier engines are still working now to adjust its trajectory to ensure the accuracy of the orbit.
I keep looking if they are having any kind of communication, because I would imagine that the two veterans would try to, talk the new one through it. They would comfort him, but that's not happening, which shows that you have real confidence.
Complete trust
they have
in
complete
him.
trust and confidence.
The post of the WeChat moment of Yaping has showed this. Support your opinion.
I'm sure they have plenty to talk in the coming 6 months.
And her daughter also comes to the Jiuquan Satellite Launch Center for her
to
mother.
watch the launch. Wow.
Yeah.
What a proud moment.
And this is the view of the solar panel still folded outside the spacecraft. Later, we will see the deployment of that solar panel indicating a successful launch mission. And that is usually the time we can hear the loudest cheerings and applaudings from the control room.
Yaping also shows pictures of her daughter, Zhao Yunxi, in her WeChat moments of her daughter's daily life, like other young mothers.
At the end of the day, she's just another mother.
Well, she's such a great inspiration for the girls out there, right?
No
a
doubt.
mother,
No
a
doubt.
great wife, and also
Can you
an
imagine
excellent
if she gives
astronaut.
another space-based lecture to all the young Chinese students looking up to her?
Yeah.
That
8
would be a
years.
huge inspiration.
Yeah, 8 years
I
after the
believe.
first time she gave the lesson, that was watched by over 60 million children. Imagine that.
Wow.
Okay, that's the successful spacecraft separation. Okay, that 3D animation is showing you the spacecraft flying on itself. It's a 3-part module, a 3-module spacecraft, as you can see. On your right is the orbital module. In the middle is the re-entry module where the 3 astronauts are sitting. On your left is the service module, right?
Opposite. So the next critical step will be unfolding of the solar panels.
0G, as they're enjoying now.
Oh, this is the microgravity.
It's already in the
environment, right?
microgravity environment.
Floating time.
So this is first time Mr. Ye Guangfu experienced it.
Wow.
So there are no pens around this time. I believe that the last time we saw some
Yeah.
pens floating as soon as they hit.
Oh, there you see, floating manual is playing
Okay,
with
that's
it.
a 0G indicator.
That's the point of the book.
The point of
Whose book is that?
Ye Guangfu.
Okay, so he's
new
showing
company.
off.
Yeah, he's showing
He's
off.
showing off a little bit.
Now he is a
that
naughty
they're
boy.
into-
Now you want the pen?
Now, the minute it asks for the pen
What
is
picture
happening.
do you want?
Yes.
So he has fulfilled his dream to come into outer space.
You can tell who's the new person among the crew. I mean, look at the other two.
Well, you see that Mr. Ye Guangfu is the 4th astronaut of China coming into orbit of the second batch of China's astronauts. But it is very unique that that usually we do not release the names of the astronauts before their flight missions. But Mr. Ye Guangfu is an exception because he attended the trainings in Europe, the cave trainings. So his name is well known by Chinese and Europeans.
And China has only selected 3 batches of astronauts so
Yes.
far, right?
Yes.
So Yeguangfu
and
believed to the second
the
batch.
second batch.
That was being selected when? In which year?
About maybe
More than a
10 more
decade
years
ago.
before.
15 years.
Yeah.
So none of the other members, except for Ye Guangfu from that second batch, has
Mr. Chen
conducted
Dong,
missions.
Mr. Tang Hongbo
they're
are also, and
both
together
from
with
this-
Ya Ping and Liu Yang, all these are belongs to the second batch.
So
now
they're
we have,
younger.
so now we have 5 astronauts who have been belongs to the second batch coming to orbit.
Okay. Oh, you are seeing the 3D animation showing you the deployment of solar panels. We're waiting for the final confirmation. Oh, that's the call out there. Successful deployment of solar panels. That's Chinese Vice Premier Han Zheng there, and also the Vice Chairman of China's Central Military Commission, Xu Xiliang. They are watching there at the Beijing Control Center. That's earlier. This is the Jiuquan Satellite Launch Center. This is the control room. Once again, they're all watching this very closely. There you see Mr. Zhang Youxia, the Vice Chairman of Central Military Commission, watching at the Jiuquan Satellite Launch Center. And this is a younger crew we are seeing. It's they are on average 6 years younger than the previous crew, the Shenzhou-12 crew. Right, we've got Flight Commander Zhai Zhigang, 55 years old, and flight engineers Wang Yaping and Ye Guangfu, both 41.
神舟13号，我是北京。
They're trying to communicate with the astronauts, the ground staff.
座舱环境及身体状况。
They're asking the astronauts
to report
health
their
status.
health conditions and the cabin status.
Yes.
座舱大气环境正常，航天员感觉良好，完毕。
That's the
That's the voice of Commander
Zhai
Zhai Zhigang saying that the taikonauts are feeling fine, he and his colleagues, and cabin status is normal.
It is always the duty of the commander to report the status of all the crew members after it come into the orbit.
So what's going to happen next? What can we expect next?
So you know that next they will open the hatch between the orbital module and the re-entry capsule, and they will be more comfortable, and they will change their suit to a common suit rather than the IVA space, not the penguin suit, but the common suit, because it will last 6.5 hours for them to before they go into the station. But before docking, they will wear their IVA spacesuit again, because it is a dangerous procedure for the docking.
For the docking.
There seems to be increased communication.
Oh, they're opening up their face shields. Getting a feel of the microgravity environment, stretching their legs for a bit.
And the book.
The book again. I can't believe they're still reading the book. I mean,
they have to follow the procedures. Yes.
I would love to get a look at that book and what's in it.
Usually the successful deployment of solar panel indicates a successful launch, and we're standing by for that official announcement.
That's great.
From the launch center confirming this is a successful launch.
And also we should check the orbital parameters to see if it is accurate enough. Only in this case we can the ground commander can announce that it is a successful launch, because the accuracy of the orbit is also very important.
根据北京实时轨道与遥测数据监视判断，神舟13号飞船已进入近地点高度200公里，
This is a replay
远
of
地
the
点高
send-out
度
ceremony.
356公里，倾角41.3度，周期1小时30分钟的预定轨道，北京出轨根数
This is a playback of that send-off ceremony earlier today.
东风
It was yesterday Beijing time.
A couple hours ago.
Before they were transported to the launch pad.
As we have just heard from background that the parameters came up. The inclination is correct, 41.3.
Yeah.
And then the apogee and perigee has been 200 kilometers and 360?
56.
Yeah. So that is a elliptical orbit. And then in the far point, the closer point is 200 kilometers to Earth, and far point is very close to the station. So that requires another short burn, and then we'll be able to connect with the station.
Because the average altitude of this orbit is lower than the station, so it's rotating the Earth faster than the station. As I mentioned, it can chasing the station and become closer and closer, and finally dock together.
So they are now flying orbit. Do those data sound all right to you?
It's a good start.
It must be within a margin that accurate enough for the orbit maneuver. So the orbit maneuver, we only have a limited delta V, or the capability to change its velocity. So must in a very small range to ensure we can dock with the station.
So the deployment of the solar panels was a good indication, but at the same time, after that happened, the ground staff were collecting and verifying all these data, and until they had all these data and they were sure that the data looked good, we could expect an announcement of success from officials.
You're still watching the playback of what has happened during the last 3 hours, all those critical moments, right? Entering the capsule and releasing of the rockets.
So at this moment, Yaping cannot receive my message on WeChat.
Do they have Wi-Fi up there? They do have Wi-Fi.
They have Wi-Fi, but maybe WeChat and microblog, currently speaking, is not able to be used on the station because of the security concerns.
Okay.
You know that technically speaking, it is possible for them to use WeChat and microblog, but you know that belongs to the internet. The internet, technically speaking, we can connect to the internet, but also we have many other concerns for security and other things.
Then what do they use the Wi-Fi for?
Well, you know that they have every astronaut have 2 mobile phones in their cabin, and they can control everything to check the status, to check the that we have a QR code on our packages, and we can scan the QR code and get the information what's inside the package.
All right, you're now watching our special coverage of the Shenzhou-13 mission. Just now, we have seen a pretty successful initial flight.
Especially after the deployment of the solar panels, things looked very good over there. And right now, we are expecting an official announcement of success from officials. In the meantime, our guests continue to discuss with us about this flight. So things looks good so far. And it will be a while before I get that announcement. But in the meantime, it looks like the astronauts are doing fine. We've been looking at visuals of them from inside the cabin. Everything looks good.
Yeah, everything looks all right to me. And Professor Yang, you were mentioning the Wi-Fi, right? They must have had some means of entertainment up there. They're staying there for 6 months.
Exactly speaking.
Can they watch TV? Can they surf the internet?
Yes. You know that during the Shenzhou-12 mission, they even watched the Olympic Games in Tokyo. Because you know that we now have the Tianlian data relay satellite constellation, so we can have almost 100 coverage of the communication between the vehicle, between the station and the ground. So the ground can record the videos of the Olympic Games and other news, and upload the video to the station, and they can watch it.
And the crew will be there during the Winter Olympic Games. I'm sure they'll be watching.
They will enjoy that. And Mr. Jiuquan also said that he has taken some videos, movies, TV series to the station, and he can watch the video in spare time. But I can predict that the most amazing thing for them in spare time is watching the beautiful scene of the Earth.
How long can they do that? I mean, I think they will be able to get a view of that when there's more light immediately. It doesn't get old, really, to look at the blue planet down below. But in terms of fitness and keeping fit, what do they do? What type of exercises are available to them during the flight?
Well, there's a treadmill, and there's also a cycling facility, and there's also elastic bands that they can use for resistant trainings. But they do need to have moving, muscles, metabolisms, even heart rates, to maintain their health conditions. You know that 6 months is long enough to lose enough bone mass, and you could be very fragile once you're landed on Earth. You don't have muscles and bones. You can easily fracture.
And what if they get sick in space? I mean, do they have medical equipments up there? How do they treat themselves?
Well, you know that there is also a special syndrome called the space motion sickness. Usually this happens about 6 hours or 7 hours after they come into orbit, and will be weaker after 2 days. So that is the reason either your docking should be 2 days after they come into orbit, or just about 6 to 7 hours before the after liftoff. You know that at this moment the astronauts are in a good status. So if anything wrong happened to the autonomous docking system, they can switch to the manual docking. These kind of things do happen. You know that just several days before, the Soyuz spacecraft launched an actress and her producer to the International Space Station.
Right, they're about to shoot a film.
Yeah, they will make a film there, and you see that during this process, there is a malfunction of the autonomous docking system. So the commander switched to the manual docking and saved the mission. So we also have these kind of preparations to ensure that we can have a 100% success.
The crew on the last manned mission, Shenzhou-13, they had a video call with the Chinese president. They talked to scholars and students, researchers in Hong Kong. I imagine there will be something similar this time on Shenzhou-13, especially since they are spending the Chinese New Year in mission there. Is a video call in line for that?
I think so. I think in the Chinese New Year, even the New Year itself, I think it's a time of celebration. In addition to dumplings, I think there's a communication method. It's a communication call is required. I'm sure that in the Chinese New Year, in particular, we're watching the Chinese New Year evening show, and I'm sure that they will be part of the show.
They will be the part of the show. Oh, that's something to look forward to.
You know that Yaping is the first space teacher of China. And during the conference yesterday, she has already confirmed that she will have the second lesson, taught the second lesson. You know that during the first lesson she taught during the Shenzhou-10 mission, there were more than 60 million pupils and middle school students watching her lessons. Very impressive.
That was a physics lesson, right? That was a
physics to demonstrate the phenomena in microgravity environment.
Yeah, I was not a student anymore back in 2013, but if I had been, I would have done a much better job with physics, I think, with a teacher like that. Absolutely.
And Wang Yaping said this during the press conference yesterday. She encouraged all the girls, all the kids, all the students out there to never stop reaching for their dream. And that touched me quite a bit. She said she herself was a good example. You know, if you work hard, if you never give up, one day your dream just might come true.
Which reminds me of that promise she made to her daughter. I will reach for the stars this time and bring you back some of the stars. I think that's just a beautiful metaphor to encourage young girls to really reach for their dreams and do things to the best of their abilities.
And be creative. Nothing can stop you.
Yeah.
Quite an inspiration.
You can see the astronauts are switching their seats. I mean, not switching, but they're standing up. And
those are the replays of earlier.
So, Mr. Zhong Shi, you also have the chance to go to outer space because you know that the first astronaut of Japan, the first astronaut of Japan is a reporter.
Okay.
So the Japan government paid to Russia, and he goes to the Mir space station by the Soyuz spacecraft. So we have examples before.
That is wonderful news. There has been
civilian astronauts.
Yes.
Will civilian astronauts be also included, in the Chinese astronaut team?
That's the third batch of China astronauts. Some of them not professional pilots. Some of them are chosen from the scientists and engineers. In the future, as we have already discussed, technically speaking, it is possible for China to have space tourism. But that this also depends on the policies of the government. And some of the private companies has expressed their wish to engage in this field. To my personal opinion, for the common people, that the suborbital travel will be option for Earth, because it will be more than 100 times cheaper than the orbital travel.
Can we talk about where we are right now in China's manned space program? Because back in the days, China prescribed this 3-step manned space program, which will culminate with the completion of the space station by the end of 2022. We are a year before that with this second manned flight into the Tiangong space station. Professor Xu, can you give us a general idea of where we are and what's ahead until that grand goal is accomplished?
I think we are taking 3-step approach. First is to send a man to space. Second is to conduct rendezvous docking and in-orbit fueling, and demonstrated by Tiangong 1 and Tiangong 2 missions. And third stage is the validation of the construction of the station. We're still in the validation process. The technologies and the parameters needs to be collected and studied by the scientific groups and technical groups before we put the 2 more segments onto the station. So once the station is completed, as you said, by 2022, it will be then in an application phase. The application phase is the purpose of the station itself. Flying more astronauts into the space station, international cooperation, international payloads and instruments, European astronauts, as you have mentioned that they have been trained in Europe and in China together, and the European astronauts are learning Chinese. Chinese astronauts are in the European cages doing some joint exercise together. So I think there's an international collaboration that we can look forward to. And then at the final grand finale of the station itself would be then the merging of robotic missions with the manned mission to exploration projects such as lunar and Mars missions. So that will be the steps that we're going to take.
The space station is designed with a lifespan of what, 10 years, 15 years?
More than 10 years.
More than 10 years.
At least 15 years. As Yanson has mentioned, actually speaking, Ms. Samantha Cristoforetti from Italy and also Mr. Matthias Moria from Germany has already been trained in Qingdao several years before. And it is amazing to see that during the interview with the media, they can speak Chinese. And the Samantha is already a veteran to the ISS, and the Matthias will have his maiden flight to the International Space Station this year. Belongs to the 3rd crew of the US Dragon spacecraft. So in the future, it is possible for them to attend China's space missions and visit our space station.
China has said this very clearly. The completed space station will be an open platform, and China welcomes cooperation. So, and you talked about those foreign astronauts being trained in China. So are we looking at quite soon after the space station hits application stage, the joint flights involving both Chinese and foreign astronauts?
Yes, but this usually, I believe this will happen after the construction of the station. I mean, after 2022. You know that only at this moment, the station can support 6 crew members for a very short period. You know that in the future, the handover of different expedition teams will be happened in orbit. That means that the former crew will go back to the Earth only after the next crew come into the...
There will be an overlap.
Yeah, they will be, yes, 6 crew, because you know that now our Tianhe only have 3 bedrooms, and our Wentian will have another 3. So in the future, after the T-shaped station is constructed, it is possible for them to deliver their task in orbit.
To report from Beijing Aerospace Center, a Long March 2 FY-13 carrier rocket has sent the Shenzhou-13 manned spacecraft to the preset orbit precisely. The solar panel was unfolded successfully, and now I declare the launch of Shenzhou-13 mission a complete success.
As an official announcement of success has been delivered, the director of Jiuquan Satellite Launch Center, Zhou Lipeng, has declared the Shenzhou-13 liftoff a success. 3 taikonauts are on board, headed for a 6-month stay at China's space station. Let's have a look at the commanding headquarters of the mission.
Oh, there you see the officials getting up. They're about to shake hands with all the engineers, scientists. There you see the Vice Premier Han Zheng there, leading a team of officials, congratulating the engineer scientists who made this mission possible.
That's right, Chinese Vice Premier Han Zheng and the Vice Chairman of China's Central Military Commission, Xu Qiliang. They are at the Beijing Control Center. They're shaking hands with engineers, ground staff. They've commended scientists and other personnel on their work. As Chairman mentioned, Vice Premier Han Zheng was also present at the last manned mission, at the launch of the last manned mission.
Mm-hmm. So after watching the whole launch, how do you feel? Now it's official. It's a successful launch.
I think once the astronauts are in space, we have what we call man in space. I mean, there we are. We, great country with the collective efforts. The reflection of Prime Minister in the scene is a reflection of collective efforts from different departments and different organizations. And this is an achievement.
Now we're looking at live pictures at the Jiuquan Satellite Launch Center, where officials are also congratulating the engineers there.
This is the Vice Chairman of the Central Military Commission, Zhang Youxia. He is watching the whole launch at the Jiuquan Satellite Launch Center. And there you have it, the iconic red screen. Every time it shows up, while we see a successful launch.
And I know there have been a lot of similarities between the last manned flight, which all 3 of you were here, and this flight. But just look at the people lining the streets at that send-off ceremony. They're still enthusiastic. They're still passionate, even though we just did this a couple of months ago. So, Professor, you were saying that this has been a success, and you were feeling the success of the mission has come, after a lot of hard work.
Yeah, it's what I call the collective efforts, and a part of the great system engineering effort is ground crew plus the technical people plus the scientists. A lot of efforts and a lot of intensive work, and people are working overnight just to make sure that the astronauts are safe. And we're seeing that from this moment all the way to rendezvous and docking. It's also a nerve-wracking moment for the ground TT&C crew, because they have to adjust the capsule's altitude and attitude and position to make sure that the radio connections are safe and sound. And that is happening only from now. It's only 6 hours from now on. So it's roughly 7 o'clock tomorrow morning Beijing time would be the rendezvous and docking. So lots of continued effort needs to be done by the ground crew as well. And not to mention 6 more months of maintenance.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that. We are now joined via Skype by Yi So-yeon, South Korean scientist and astronaut. She is also the first South Korean citizen to go to space. A pleasure to have you on the program. As the first South Korean to fly to space, especially as a female, what do you have to share with us today on this occasion?
Hello. Yeah, so nice to meet you. And I'm so happy that my friend Yaping fly again to the station, because 2 years ago, she told me she's preparing for going to the new space station with a more scientific experiment. And then we had a lot common, because I also had a first Korean science class in space station and then share with all the Korean kids. And then Yaping also do that. And then we were in the same panel. So I'm so happy that she made her goals happen.
And over the past decades, China has rolled out programs to collaborate with institutions and universities around the world, including the Tokyo University. One professor from the school is hoping China's space program will boost space science research in the near future.
Researchers around the globe are watching China's space program with keen interest. Professor Shinji Nakaya at Tokyo University is